My dear students, I welcome you all to my first video class. In this session, we are going to discuss about one of the textbooks that you're going to study in this academic year. You have to study two textbooks, a book of grammar, which is called Streams, a book of literature, which is titled Springs. In this video, I'm going to talk about the textbook or the book of literature called Springs. I'm going to talk about the book of grammar in my next video. Springs is your book of literature which carries 50 marks weightage, and the pattern of questions remain similar to what you answered in the last academic year. You will have 12 1-mark questions, 8 4-mark questions, and 1 6-marks question. To answer all 12 1-mark questions, you have to focus on each and every detail of the texts that you're going to study. And in the second main, 10 questions will be given. You have to answer only 8 of them. And in the third main, 3 questions will be given. You will have to answer 1 question for 6 marks. So you have to study this textbook to score 50 marks. So what I'm going to do now is that I am not going to talk about any one of the prescribed texts in detail. Instead of that, I'm going to just brief you about the 14 texts that are given in this textbook. If you have the textbook, that's fine. If you do not have the textbook, you can actually go to PU Board's website and download this book. This book has 14 pieces of literature, from Romeo and Juliet to Water, the last poem, a translated Telugu poem written by Challapalli Swaruparani. The first text is called Romeo and Juliet, written by William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, as you all know, a very famous English poet and playwright, widely regarded as the greatest writer in the English language and the world's preeminent dramatist, who has written famous plays and sonnets as well. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare. We are not going to discuss the entire play for this academic year. We are going to discuss an extract from this great tragedy written by William Shakespeare. We are actually going to discuss only 2 dialogues from this tragedy. First dialogue is selected from Act 1 and Scene 5, and the second dialogue is selected from Act 3, Scene 2. Romeo and Juliet is an extract from one of Shakespeare's famous plays that speaks of passionate love. This poetic outpouring of feelings of love with appropriate imagery and diction aims to give learners an opportunity to see how a master artist handles the theme of love and how his rendering stands apart. So this is Romeo and Juliet. The next text is a short story written by Count Leo Tolstoy, a Russian writer who primarily wrote novels and short stories. Tolstoy is a master of realistic fiction and is widely considered as one of the world's greatest novelists ever. He is best known for his two long novels, and the first one is War and Peace, of course, which was written in 1869, and Anna Karenina, which was published in 1877. A short story written by Count Leo Tolstoy has been prescribed for you called Two Deer. The word dear has two meanings. A, intimate, close. Say for example, he is a dear friend of mine. Here, the word dear means close, close friend, dear friend, intimate friend. But here, too dear means too costly. Here, the word dear means costly. You have to read the short story to actually know what is costly and why is it so costly. Too Dear is a short story that presents the case of an offender and satirizes the impractical measures taken by those in power in dealing with it. The unit aims to sensitize the readers about the whims and fancies of the ruling class and make them reflect on how these affect the governance. It also makes them aware of the vanity of human greed for power and futile means of its exercise. The next text is a poetic essay written by Khalil Gibran called On Children. Khalil Gibran is a Lebanese American artist and poet who became very popular after he published his book, The Prophet. On Children is a beautiful poem, a poetic essay that speaks of the role of parents in raising children. The poem serves as an iconoclast, deconstructing the established beliefs and customs that dictate the attitudes of parents towards children. It talks about how to raise children. The next text is an essay written by world-renowned environmentalist Vandana Shiva, a semi-autobiographical essay called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Forest. This is an essay that speaks of the role of environment in human life, focusing on the countless lessons nature imparts. This unit aims to make students think about the myriad ways of environment that affect and shape the course of human life on earth. It also makes them imbibe a healthy, scientific and indigenous attitude towards the natural world. It's a beautiful essay that talks about the need of the hour. The next text, the fifth text, is a one-act play. It's a one-act play written by Serafin and Jacqueline Alvarez Quinta, two brothers, Spanish brothers, known as Golden Boys of Madrid Theatre, and they were celebrated playwrights of the early 20th century. Together they wrote about 200 plays, which depict the life, manners, and speech of the people of Andalusia in southern Spain. Sunny Morning is a one-act play that comically presents the two comically presents the meeting of two once upon a time lovers in a park. The one act play makes students realize the intricacies of human relations and attitudinal changes that are brought about by change of circumstances with regard to time, space, and social status. The play provides a comic relief with its deftly woven plot. Deftly means craftily. Deftly woven plot and presentation. It's a beautiful one act play. I'm 100% sure you will enjoy reading it. The next text is a short love poem written by W.B. Yeats. William Butler Yeats, who received Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. W.B. Yeats is an Irish poet and one of the foremost figures of 20th century literature. His early poetry is part of the Celtic Twilight or the Irish literary revival, and it uses the history, myths, and heroic figures of Ireland. He's an Irish poet. He wrote in English, but he is not an English poet. He is an Irish poet. When You Are Old is a poem that speaks of the temporal nature of physical beauty and upholds the perennial beauty of soul. The poem presents two states of beauty, one at the physical level and the other at the spiritual level. It aims to persuade the learners to reflect upon the transitory quality of love based on physical beauty and makes them appreciate the beauty of soul, which is stable and eternal. So the next text is a translated Kannada short story written by P. Lankesh, a very popular Kannada short story writer, novelist, journalist, filmmaker, teacher, whatnot he was. Gardener is a short story written by P. Lankesh with a unique narrative technique that presents the strained relations of rivals. The short story provides insights into the strange and enigmatic human relations with all their complexity and variety. It makes the learners aware of the cosmic dimensions of rivalry and tries to equip them with an understanding of not only human nature with its strengths and weaknesses, but also the enmity between countries. It's also a deftly woven short story. P. Lankesh, of course, who became very popular after he started his tabloid paper called Lankesh Patrike. P. Lankesh is a must-read writer for all the lovers of Kannada literature as well. The next text is a poem written by Pablo Neruda, a Chilean writer, a Nobel laureate writer again, who received Nobel Prize in 1971, and Neruda's most popular, very famous collection of poems is called 20 Love Poems and a Song of Despair, which was published in 1924. I'm definitely going to read one of the poems from this collection when we discuss this prescribed poem called To the Foot from Its Child. To the Foot from Its Child is a poem that explores the limitations imposed on one's human potential by oneself and society. This poem aims to sensitize learners about the endless possibilities of human accomplishments. It also draws attention to how these possibilities are thwarted as men and women grow up facing harsh realities of life, losing their imagination and dreams. And this particular poem philosophically talks about life, freedom, etc., etc. Now let's move on to the next text. And the next text is an interview. Done by Robert Alifano, a poet, storyteller, essayist, and journalist. Robert Alifano has interviewed Jorge Luis Borges. Luis Borges is an Argentine short story writer, essayist, poet, and translator born in Buenos Aires. I believe that books will never disappear is an interview that was taken after Luis Borges became blind. That's the specialty of this interview. When this interview was taken, by the time this interview was taken, Borges has already lost his vision. I believe books will never disappear is an interview that presents the views of a distinguished writer on life, literature, and books. The interview serves as a window through which one can witness the vicissitudes of life, the making of the literary art, the alluring world of books, and so on. It provides an unparalleled access to the enlightening world of a writer and thinker. It's a wonderful interview, and I'm sure you will be enlightened when you read this interview. Let's move on to the next text. Next text is a beautiful poem written by Kuvempu, Kuppalli Venkatappa Puttappa. Kuvempu, who don't know Kuvempu? Everybody knows Kuvempu in Karnataka. He actually got the first Jnanpith award for Kannada literature for his epic called Ramayana Darshanam, Sri Ramayana Darshanam. So, Heaven If You're Not on Earth is a translated Kannada poem, a short poem, beautiful poem. And the Kannada title of this poem is Swarghave Bhumiyoliradire Neenu. And this poem is translated by C. Nagarna, Dr. C. Nagarna. Heaven If You're Not on Earth is a poem that defines heaven in an altogether different perspective. This poem aims to make students aware that the traditional concept of heaven can be reconstructed and reinvented by realizing that it can be created on the earth with human effort and by living in harmony with one's surrounding physical and social setup. It is going to give you a very different image of heaven. The next text is a travelogue, is a travel piece written by George Mikesh. George Mikesh is an artist, author, publisher, and journalist from Hungary. Japan and Brazil through a traveler's eye is a travelogue that talks about the manners of Japanese people and how the people of Brazil drive in Brazil. It's a travelogue that illustrates the ethos of two countries with the people's manners and way of looking at things. The unit introduces the learners to different ways of living in two culturally and ethnically distinct countries in the world. The enduring account of the people and their social behavior makes the learners look at different cultures with empathy. So the next text is a short story written by Chinua Achebe, a Nigerian novelist, poet, professor, and critic. Achebe's novels always focus on the tradition of Igbo society, the effect of Christian influences, and the clash of Western and traditional African values during and after the colonial era. Achebe is a very popular among the people who read literature, who became very famous after he published Things Fall Apart, his debut novel, and is also known for his novels Era of God, No Longer at Ease, Enemy of the People, Girls at War, etc., etc. The author is a short story written by Chinua Achebe, which is set in an African context and depicts the dilemma of a person involved in the process of electioneering. This short story, in the first place, speaks of a person's predicament when he is compelled to get into an embarrassing situation. Secondly, it throws light on the role of electorate in a democratic setup, providing insights into man's individualistic and mass behavior. It's an interesting and inciting short story to read and to understand politics. Next text is an article or essay called Where There Is a Wheel, which is written by P. Sainath, Palgumi Sainath. Palgumi Sainath has received Ramon Magsaysay Prize for journalism. He is an Indian journalist and photojournalist focusing on social problems, rural affairs, poverty, and aftermaths of globalization in India. He is a rural affairs editor of The Hindu, a regular contributor to The Telegraph in Calcutta. He also writes for the Fortnightly, Frontline, and the Daily Business Line in Chennai. And this particular article was written by P. Sainath to the Hindu newspaper, and this particular essay is also included in his best-selling book, Everybody Loves a Drought. Everybody Loves a Good Drought. Where There Is a Wheel is an essay that elaborates the concept of women empowerment through the simple act of bicycling. The essay explains how a simple act like learning to ride a bicycle can bring about a considerable change in the lives of people and empower them. The fact-filled article, based on contemporary reality, shows how bicycling has taken the shape of a movement in the rural areas of Pudukkottai in Tamil Nadu. The next and the last text in this textbook is a lengthy poem written by Challapalli Swaruparani, a Telugu poet. Water is a poem written by Challapalli Swaruparani that explores the countless forms of social discrimination and injustice with the metaphor of water. The poem speaks of how water has stood witness to acts of oppression in the name of religion, caste, and creed. It traces the trial of inhuman practices that prevail in society over several generations. The poem also speaks of how water, a natural resource, has become a commodity in the contemporary market regulated world. These are the texts that we are going to discuss in detail in the next videos. Thank you.